As I already said in the previous video, the main question about non-monogamy is why do some people seek sexual relationships outside of their marriage? And there are many reasons for this, and in this video I will not be able to enumerate all the reasons, but let me try to explain some of the dynamics, and of course the Enneagram will be very important in this regard. Before I go into more detail, I want to highlight that there may be many reasons why somebody may be interested in extramarital sex, but it doesn't mean that everybody is acting on it. And there can be different reasons for this. Because whereas some people may not have big moral problems with this, others do. Or whereas some may have an inner sense of entitlement, others don't. And some may be afraid of losing their primary partners, and others don't. So societal views on extramarital sex may clearly have a huge impact, but also the dynamics of the types and instincts may play a role. And on top of that, it's also important that the desire for extramarital sex does not mean that somebody would actually enjoy the experience. So why do people have extramarital sex, or why do they want it? Well, one could come up with a very long list of common reasons for both consensual non-monogamy and for cheating. Some people find sex with their long-term partner too much routine and even boring, so they seek excitement and novelty. So they may believe it can enrich their relationship. And indeed, in some cases, it can work if it is properly done. But there are many cases where this isn't working, so experimenting this way can be an extremely dangerous game. Some people feel they do not have enough sex, that their partner's libido is much lower than theirs, or because the partner is refusing sex. Some people may want to feel desired by a partner, and if the primary partner is sexually repressed, it may not be much fun to share the bed with this person. There is nothing exciting about having sex with someone who doesn't desire you, but who has sex out of a sense of duty or just to make you stop complaining. And some people even cheat because they're trying to leave their primary relationship, but they don't know how to do it. Cheating in a way that they will most likely get caught is like dropping a bomb on the relationship. So although I could speak about these in more detail for hours, I want to focus on the reasons that are more closely related to the psychology of the enneatypes. The Enneagram can help explain why transgressions may occur or why someone may be interested in seeking out extramarital sex. Now remember how I spoke at length about the use of sex to find ego gratification in lesson 2. Well, when the ego gratification is not met with the primary partner, people may want to look outside of the relationship. People are seeking meaning in sex, but it cannot be found there. And this creates a desire just to seek it elsewhere. So let me dig a bit deeper into these type-related motivations for non-monogamy, as well as their attitudes towards it. Basically, the type mainly explains why people cheat, and the instinct explains more how people cheat. And on top of that, all types also have their own logic of rationalizing away their guilt of cheating by justifying and legitimating it somehow in their own specific way. Very interesting, and this is something Esther Perel also wrote about in a lot of detail. Non-monogamy, and especially transgressions, can be a way for reinventing oneself. When you are doing your inner work, or when life is somehow pushing you into a different ego state or a different level of development, you may be tapping more into your essence. And you may want to bring this essence into your sexual relationship as well, but experimenting with changing the dynamics in the bedroom with your primary partner may feel very scary. Because as a couple, you may have developed your specific way of experiencing sex and sexuality for more than a decade, and then suddenly doing things radically different may not feel like something you want to play with. So some people happen to cheat in order to move into their different self. They try to dissociate from their habitual personality and move into a state that feels much more empowered, self-confident and fulfilling. And once they feel secure in this new role, they may bring this back to their primary relationship. So it's not that they want to have sex with another person, they actually want to be another person themselves. Of course, this reason to cheat is not that common, but I still wanted to highlight that it does exist. And I do not want to give you the impression that this type of cheating is somehow acceptable or that it has to be part of one's inner work or developmental growth path. No, definitely not. But I also think that sometimes we ought to be careful with judging people if we do not fully understand the dynamics of what is happening. Normalizing cheating is the last thing I want to do here, but we should try to move away from the generally accepted opinion that cheating is something done only by sick people. So instead of judging it, we should try to understand why it is happening so that it would actually happen less. Let's start with type 8 for going into detail on these type-specific reasons and attitudes towards non-monogamy. What could the motivation be for type 8 to seek extramarital sex? And how do they feel in general about non-monogamy? Well, remember their motto? Why get 50% if you can get 200%? They may not want to settle with bad sex. They may not want to settle with not enough sex. So immature 8s tend to have a strong sense of entitlement. So if their needs are not met, they will just voice it. They won't hide it. They don't want to go behind the back of their partner. They won't just accept it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they will just cheat on the partner. No. If this happens at the beginning of the relationship and before marriage, 8s are very likely to just abandon the partner because it feels unjust, it doesn't feel right. In other cases, they may seek to open the relationship. Some 8s may be able to handle consensual non-monogamy if there is no emotional bond involved with the third person and when clear rules and boundaries are set. 8s value honesty. So when people are honest, then there won't be any complications. Yet, opening the relationship means that the extramarital sex is consensual. So it's a matter of agreeing with the partner. And for type 8, agreeing may most often mean imposing it on the partner, but still assuming the partner is okay with it. So they may push for it themselves, but they may be less likely to accept it if their partner comes up with the idea. Polyamory, however, is even much more challenging, and even for the social 8, because polyamory requires too much balancing and nuances. Don't forget, 8s can all too easily get into some kind of binary thinking mode, which is not compatible with the level of complexity required for polyamory. And finally, as a last resort, if they feel entitled to have a second sexual partner and cheat, if they feel this is a justified way to get their needs met, then 8s may just go for it. And due to their possessiveness, they may feel as if it's fine for themselves to have an affair, but not for the partner. Some 8s may not even try too much to hide their infidelity because they don't want to spend too much time on trying to keep things secret. And in some cultures, they may even say, so what, if they get caught. Such a reaction doesn't mean they own their transgression, but they just do not want to talk about it. Other 8s may try to hide it, but if they get caught, they will deny heavily by justifying what they did. They will shut down the topic of cheating by telling why it was justified and why it was even needed. And they will not only deny it towards others, but they will especially deny it towards themselves. 8s are very focused on never being betrayed. and they would not want to admit that they did something themselves that is entirely unforgivable. So, as long as the cheating can be justified, it doesn't count as betrayal. The ego gratification of type 9 is all about seeking bliss, harmony, a dissolution of boundaries, a state of unconditional love and union, a state of inner and eternal peacefulness. And of course, when they do not find this with their primary partner, they may want to seek this elsewhere. 9s may have sexual desire for someone else, but they most often do not have a system to deal with it. They have no clear views. So things just go with the flow, where transgressions just sometimes happen. As they are less assertive and more withdrawn, 9s may not voice clearly that they feel their needs are not met. And it also implies that they may be less prone to easily speak with their partner about non-monogamous desires. As their inner resentment just grows, they may seek someone secretly instead of communicating openly. And most can do this in a way that the partner wouldn't even suspect this. Now, this doesn't mean that 9s never end up in open relationships or consensual non-monogamy, but most likely this will not be on their own initiative, but that of their partner. For some people, monogamy and non-monogamy are non-negotiable, but type 9 is more flexible. They're more willing to agree to anything with a partner and can easily see all sides of the coin. So they may agree to the desires of their partner and pretend to be fine with it, but at the same time, deep inside, they may face a growing resentment. Of course, this doesn't mean that all 9s are just going along with anything the partner suggests. The role of sexual values, as I described in the first lesson, is extremely important here. Now, let's go back to the potential cheating of type 9. Most often, the 9 is just going to claim that it just happened. And indeed, it is most often not that they were proactively and assertively looking for someone to cheat on their partner. They somehow subconsciously send out signals they are available, and they do not undertake anything to stop these things from happening. They may just give in to the thrill of doing something exciting. So it's not uncommon for a 9 to be a wonderful spouse, but an extramarital affair just happened. It's their subconscious mechanism to de-responsibilize themselves and to allow themselves not to feel too guilty about their own behavior. Some 9s may be very much aware of what they are doing, but just using it just happened as an excuse and hope to get away with it. Now, another way of justifying and rationalizing the transgression is by telling themselves that their primary relationship is on the verge of breaking down anyway, so they're not doing anything wrong. Of course, it's also possible that 9s were just taken advantage of and they just let things happen, even if they did not seek something outside of their primary relationship. So how do 9s convince themselves that cheating is justifiable? Well, cheating from their side, of course. Well, of course, it just happened is a good form of de-responsibilizing themselves. But the 9 may also tell themselves, look, I'm an attentive and loving person in my relationship. And if the transgression doesn't affect this love, then why should it really matter? So the interesting thing is that 9s seek harmony, but they can actually make a big mess. Extramarital affairs may just happen, and they do not react in time to stop something that can lead to major negative consequences for their primary relationship. Still, I want to underline again that there is no evidence that any type cheats more than any other type. For every type, there may be motivations to cheat, but there is also motivations not to cheat. And in the case of type 9, their laziness may prevent cheating from happening. It may take quite some energy to find somebody, especially if the nine is socially blind. And on top of that, nines don't want much complexity in their life. So they may not want to have the emotional mess around them. They don't want to complicate life. So they just control their impulses somehow. And this desire not to face problems also shows up in how they may deal with infidelity from the side of the partner. Sometimes they may know about it, but they don't want to face it. They will be hurt like anyone else, but they do not want to upset the environment in which they are living. So it's only when the affair really affects their world that they may open up and tackle the issue. For type 1, sex is about doing the right or the appropriate thing. And what is right or appropriate depends very much on the values of the person. So when the one perceives there is something wrong or inappropriate in their sex lives, they will seek to rectify this. And similar to AIDS, many ones are quite likely to voice directly when their needs are not met, or when they think their sex life is not how it should be. The values will also determine whether they view non-monogamy as something appropriate or inappropriate. So in a religious environment, it will be seen as wrong. But in a liberal society, it may be seen as appropriate. So most often, they're going to act on that basis. So some may stay in the relationship, even if their sexual needs are not met, even if their partner cheated on them, even if there was some form of sexual abuse, just because this is the right thing to do. They may be unhappy and put up with a lot of challenges, but still remain committed. And others, on the contrary, they may find it right to open the marriage or find a justification for cheating on their partner. But there is, however, one more important remark to be made about ones with sexually repressed values. There are many cases of such people who repress their sexual needs and they try to live a life which looks pious to the outside world, but they're unable to manage their inner desires. And as a result, they may lead some kind of secret life with prostitutes or a mistress. Because again, what you repress will come out at some point. Twos seek connection and closeness and the breaking of the partner's boundaries through sex, because they believe this is the ultimate proof of love. So love where they are receiving. So if they do not perceive that this is strong enough, they may just want to find someone else. As they equate sex with love, twos look extremely negatively to possible non-monogamous desires of their partner, because such desires just devalue their relationship in their view. So twos are quite unlikely to put up with this, and they may prefer to leave the relationship instead. After all, twos seek emotional exclusivity, and they cannot believe a bond can be shared with more than one partner. So if they find out that their partner has been cheating on them, twos will experience a lot of anger because their pride has been hurt. So some twos may leave the relationship or marriage, but others may actually stay because they're afraid of the feeling of abandonment. However, even if they stay physically in the relationship, they will actually have left this relationship emotionally. Many twos will claim that they do not have any non-monogamous desires because they claim to have a very low sexual desire in general, except if they have a strong sexual instinct. However, most twos just repress these desires and they may not want to be honest to themselves of these desires and fantasies. So it's actually not uncommon for twos to be extremely sexual but fear their own sexuality, so they just shut it down. Still, some twos may end up in non-monogamous constellations or even in group sex. But this is only possible if they feel they are in the center of attention and when they do not have to share. Some twos may end up cheating in a desperate but very unlikely successful attempt to feel loved. Especially in the lower ranges of development, twos may get very promiscuous to seek permanent validation and admiration. Yet, very interestingly, twos may cheat and not perceive themselves to be cheating. So just like nines, who may get rid of any responsibility by saying it just happened, twos may personally dissociate from the act. So they can say, I didn't do it because the body is not part of who I am. So twos may cheat and forget their own wrongdoings quite quickly and just repress them into the subconscious mind. Type 3 is looking for admiration, validation that somebody wants me, acknowledgement. So if the primary partner doesn't offer this, or at least not strong enough to the likes of the 3, the desire for another partner may come up. Some 3s may flirt and get the ego gratification when the flirting is reciprocated. And other 3s may feel that the absence of sufficient validation or appreciation by the primary partner and the presence of validations by somebody else or a stranger legitimates or even entitles a transgression. So the overvaluing of their own desirability may be a motivation for cheating because the inner hollowness is intolerable and they believe sex can fill it up. After all, most heart types feel that sex equates to love. So they may cheat to seek validation, but as this validation will never feel good enough, it may just lead to seeking one brief sexual encounter after the other. 3s have a strong resemblance with type 2, as they have a similar attitude towards the exclusivity of the attention, and they also experience great jealousy. If the partner has non-monogamous desires, it will be seen as a confirmation that the 3 is not special and thus not loved. However, if they find out about the infidelity of their partner, they will most likely disconnect from the painful emotions of the betrayal. So their reaction will most likely depend on their image. If they want to keep up the image of having a perfect family and outsiders are not aware of the betrayal, they're likely to just close their eyes. They may stay with their unfaithful partner, especially if that partner can convince them that the 3 is still the special one and still the most desired and desirable in their life. But if, on the other side, the infidelity is publicly known, then the 3 will perceive this as an insult. So the most likely face-saving option in such a case is to leave, and preferably with a lot of grandiosity. So 3s may also decide to engage in consensual non-monogamy, but only if it means they will be in the center of attention and they will get even more admiration. Still, this doesn't come easy to them as they would be constantly comparing with the others, and this would lead to even more self-doubt, and it could even drive them insane. 4s may use sex as a way of experiencing some sense of authenticity, as well as a unique soul connection with their sexual partner. As they tend to be more focused on what is missing than on what is present, it's logical that 4s hardly ever feel that their needs are fully met. And this can easily lead to fantasies and desires for another partner. So it's actually not uncommon for 4s to desire non-monogamy when they're in a monogamous relationship and to seek monogamy when they're in some kind of non-monogamous constellation. But almost all 4s, and even those in a committed and loving relationship or marriage, have this kind of feeling that somewhere out there is a special person waiting for them, but they just haven't met that person yet. And some 4s may actually have some kind of a spiritual partner besides their primary life partner, but they won't have a sexual relationship with this person. And they may claim they don't even want a sexual relationship with that person. However, when digging deeper, The reality is that they may crave sex with this spiritual partner. As a matter of fact, this spiritual partner just embodies everything that is not in their marriage. It's somehow a personification of what is missing. But they don't want to have sex with the person because else it would just spoil everything. And just like sex is not that much about the physical act, but more about the emotional and even spiritual connection they crave, the same logically applies to their non-monogamous desires. They do not seek great sex, they seek a great connection. Just like 2s and 3s, 4s are unlikely to have much understanding for a partner who just has some physiological sexual desires outside of the primary relationship, because they equate sex with love. There's another interesting thing about 4s. Now, with other types, it's mainly the social dominant people who find it more easy to be in a non-monogamous relationship. But this seems to be somehow reversed for type 4. Social blind 4s can more easily be polyamorous. And it's all too often the social 4s who are very possessive and experience huge jealousy if their partner has non-monogamous desires. And interestingly, some 4s, and especially the social 4s, may find authenticity in monogamy and in not pursuing their non-monogamous desires. Some 4s may also want to explore non-monogamy as a way to rebel against the strict values of their society, as a way to experience the forbidden, or as a way for chasing what is missing. When 4s cheat, they will not remember the sex itself, but more the emotions they experienced, what they talked about, how they flirted, how the foreplay was, how they experienced the emotional connection. But of course, they will also experience a lot of guilt for cheating on their primary partner. Again, not because of the sexual act, but more because of the emotional cheating. And finally, finding out that a partner has cheated on you is an immense source of suffering for anyone. But 4s tend to stay very, very long in their suffering. Yet, if the adulterous partner is saying honestly they are sorry, the 4 may decide to forgive the incident. But they will keep it as a source of suffering for a long, long time. 5s very often don't want sex to interfere with their sense of non-attachment. For many 5s, sex is sex, so it's the physical act, a biological necessity, and they don't want to deal with any emotionality. So if the partner is expecting more emotional involvement than the 5 can handle, then they may want to seek somebody else. So some 5s may be able to have sex with an extramarital partner as long as it's a pragmatic arrangement, but they most often do not have the emotional capacity to deal with polyamory, so with another emotional relationship. Dealing with one emotional relationship is already a challenge, so they don't have the inner resources to deal with more. And so thanks to their compartmentalization, they're actually able to have affairs which do not impact their relationship with their spouse. The spouse is one box and the sexual affair with someone else is another box. Some 5s may even be open to the idea of their partner having a consensual extramarital affair, as long as this affair is approached in a pragmatic and transparent manner and intellectually makes sense. One self-preservation 5 even had a very rational view on living together with a third partner. If 3 adults live together, there is more income and more adults to deal with the kids. Plus, it may be a relief if the partner has emotional demands on them. But whereas a sexual 5 may be quite afraid of being left alone because of an extramarital affair, many other 5s are less afraid of losing their partner. And it's not that they are looking forward to losing the stability, but sometimes they can even see the benefit of not having to worry about sharing resources, energy, and emotions with a partner anymore. Their thinking is a bit like, I don't want to be with you anyway. I actually did you a favor by being with me. So if you want to leave, just leave. But of course, there's also fives who are not able to grasp intellectually how non-monogamy could work. So they're not going to engage into it, and they're not going to accept it from the partner. Type 6 seeks strength, a feeling of confidence, reassurance, predictability, a confirmation of trust, the safety of the relationship through sex. However, in case this form of ego gratification is not met, they won't look for it outside of the marriage, because an extramarital affair brings even more instability, more insecurity, more unpredictability. The main motivator for the non-monogamous desires of the six often relate more to the sense of excitement they are missing, because they are too much focused on stability in their primary relationship. Their aversion to polarity and intensity kills the sexual spice of their marriage, but deep inside they still want to find it somehow, and they want to run away from their sense of sexual boredom. Loyalty is a key value for sixes. So you might think they never cheat and they're not open to non-monogamy of their partner either. Again, there don't seems to be any type that cheats more or less than other types. But in order to understand the approach of sixes to non-monogamy, we need to go back to some other key values for this type: predictability and pragmatism. If the partner of the six comes up with the idea of non-monogamy, then the first reaction is going to be no. It's conditioned by fear of the end of the relationship. But after talking things through, and if the six feels that the extramarital affair would have no negative impact on the safety and the security of their primary relationship, then these sixes may actually agree to give their partner what they seek. They have an attitude of, I can live with anything, but I just need to know. I can adapt to any situation, but I want to know. And this reasoning may sound counterintuitive, but it's actually very simple. Just like any other type, sixes are afraid the partner may run off with someone else. But by opening up the relationship, they actually remove the threat of cheating to a large extent, and they can exercise a certain control over the non-monogamy of their partner. Of course, many sixes are so focused on trust and loyalty and have values that are very negative towards non-monogamy. So it doesn't mean that all sixes are just going to agree. Some sixes may also have a very interesting attitude towards the cheating of a partner. Of course, many may not tolerate it and file for divorce. But some may actually have a very pragmatic approach. And they may think, look, the worst thing that could happen has happened already. So they find a rational solution that looks at addressing the unmet needs of the partner instead of hoping it will not repeat itself. And of course, this doesn't mean they go over this lightheartedly, but just that in such situations, they may be able to turn negative events into an opportunity to bring even more structure and even more clarity to the family. So don't forget, sixes fear abandonment. And for many, divorce is the worst thing possible. So quitting a relationship is extremely difficult for them. So they just try to find a pragmatic way not to lose the relationship or marriage. Sixes are also very pragmatic about dealing with their own sexual needs when they feel these are not met. At first, they will feel very uncomfortable with their non-monogamous desires because it feels like undermining the loyalty to their marriage. Still, they know how to find ways to get these desires met without jeopardizing or threatening the relationship. Some may just decide it's not worth any risk, so they somehow cope with their frustration and they will just most likely just fantasize and masturbate. Others may somehow have the courage to talk about it with their partner and get to an arrangement whereby they get some of their needs met outside the marriage, but in such a way that it does not threaten the stability of the emotional bond. And of course, it's mainly the sexual sixes who will come up with more courage. However, all too often, sixes may not be able to conceptualize themselves how they would see an open sexual relationship. So they might just rely on the partner to suggest something, which then the six could just agree with. But of course, other sixes may just end up cheating, and they may be as skilled as nines in hiding it in such a way that nobody would ever expect it from them. However, due to their fear of being caught, sixes may experience sexual dysfunctions, which may make the infidelity not necessarily too pleasurable. And very important, even if the six in a happy marriage has an extramarital affair, they may still feel very loyal to their primary partner. So, sixes may end up with some transgressions, but they are actually unlikely to have a long-term extramarital affair. Partially because they do not want to mess up their primary relationship, but also because a long-term extramarital affair is just too complex to handle and to hide within the limits of the plausible deniability they're very good at. Sixes also have their own way of justifying their cheating to themselves in a way that's actually quite similar to the way that we can see in nines. They tell themselves that sex is the only or one of the few areas in life where they're not fully compatible with their partner. As they are loyal and very supportive to their spouse in all other areas of life, they feel that they have somehow earned the right for a little transgression. It's just like a little white lie. But after all, they feel themselves to be very happy in marriage, and there is nothing in their mind that would think about quitting the relationship or divorce. As I said, nines and sixes are very good at creating an impression that would not make anyone think they could possibly cheat. However, sixes very often have an urge to confess their transgressions. They're often very bad at keeping a secret, and on top of that, they do not like their own lack of loyalty. And this contradiction between wanting to confess and fearing the consequences of the confession can really terrorize them. So whether or not they will confess most likely depends on the type of the partner, so on the expected reaction. If they think the partner is going to forgive them, most likely they will confess. But if they think the partner will leave them, then they'll just keep it a secret. Finally, type 7 seeks fun in sex. And you might think that as a result of this eternal drive for endless fun, they may be quite promiscuous. While again, there is not a single piece of evidence that suggests that 7s are cheating more than any other type. Yes, 7s can be extremely committed and faithful in a relationship, but of course they still have this desire to feel and experience freedom. 7s like to keep their options open. They can get easily bored in sexual relationships. They need novelty in order not to feel suffocated. They're curious and open to new or different things, and they may fear being trapped in a marriage with boring sex. But they may not act out on their desires, but just fantasize about them. or they may like to play with this sexual energy via flirting, but that does not necessarily mean they would get sexual. Quite some sevens are in favor of open relationships, play with non-monogamy, go to swinger clubs or sex parties when they're not in a committed relationship, because it's just about playing with sex and sexual energy. But the moment they are in a serious sexual relationship, many may become very averse to any form of non-monogamy or polyamory, because they can be very much afraid of losing their partner. Of course, this doesn't mean that they have no extramarital affairs at all. Many sevens may feel trapped and seek more fun. And being an assertive type, they may really go for it. As they tend to be easygoing, it can also be much easier for them than most other types to find an extramarital sexual partner. Now, as I said, there is no type that cheats more than others, but some are worse at hiding it, and sevens tend to be pretty bad at hiding. Self-discipline in terms of containing or controlling their non-monogamous desires may be difficult, as they prefer just to deal with the fallout after they've had the excitement.